Hi, my name is Billy, and this is my story. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, California, by a single mother who was raising me and my siblings. It wasn't only us, but rather also it was my grandma. So there was never really a male figure in my life. I didn't realize until I got older how much of an effect that would do to my mental and my emotional. At the age of 10, my mom eventually got married, and I had this male figure finally in my life who I began to call Dad. 3 years after they got a divorce, and that was when my whole perspective of a man or of a father was distorted. I started being on the streets because it took me downward spiral. I began to drink, party, and smoking weed. I was just finding myself just trying to cover up the hurt and the void that I was trying to fill with all these other things. Once I hit 18, I decided to just move out. I was working 2 jobs. Eventually, because of trying to afford my addiction, I ended up losing it all. I wasn't able to afford the place that I was staying at, and I was at a point of either facing homelessness or swallowing my pride and going back home. And I was remembered of the story of the prodigal son who had also hit rock bottom, and he decided to go back home, and there was a loving father in that story. In my story, it was a loving mother. When I made that decision to go back, and I remember knocking at her door, she opened up the door with her arms wide open, and she was crying, and she just welcomed me back in. But she also asked me to go back to church, and so I started going back to church, and I started serving, and eventually I got into a relationship, and it lasted 2 years. But it was very toxic. When that relationship ended at the age of 21, that's when just everything went downhill. I started just losing value for myself, and I started indulging more in like my drug use and alcohol. A week before my 22nd birthday, I attempted suicide. By the grace of God, my older brother managed to get me on time, and then the hospital sent me to a 5150. It was there where I spent my 22nd birthday. It was then when I called out to God and was like, God, like, if you're real, get me out of this. When I got out of the hospital, my mom brought up the LA Dream Center. That is where I had an encounter with God, and it completely just changed everything around. So after I graduated the 1-year discipleship program, I was asking God for just direction. And I remember the men's pastor at that time, I remember him stopping and looking at me and telling me, I feel you're called to Victory Bible College. Immediately when I heard those words, I burst into tears. I just asked God, okay, God, confirm it if this is your calling. I did not know how I was going to do it financially, but my whole first semester was paid for already, and God kept providing for my vehicle, for just everything along the way. Since coming to Victory, I've actually experienced so much of the fruit of the Spirit in many areas of my life. And not only that, but I've also been able to just be a part of ministry, hands-on missions trips, something that I never had done in my entire life. And it all just happened the second that I stepped foot on Victory College. My life had changed for the better. My name is Billy, and this is Victory.